There we go.
All right. So, welcome to the Howard Deals podcast. We had Jacob Mendez and his dad were at were you Tommy Mello's event down
Yes,
in
Yeah.
San Diego?
yes,
Yeah, and you guys said you want to talk about basically succession planning, it sounds like. We
yes.
thought, well, why don't we just talk about it on a podcast? That way other people can benefit. They're hearing about it and ideas they have and that kind of stuff. So go ahead. So what do you got? You guys want to both introduce yourselves and where you're from and how big your business is and that kind of stuff?
Yes, yes, my name is Enrique Mendez, which they call me Rick Mendez. I've been doing this for over 30 years. Been in business for 24 years already. And I started this from the ground down. I mean, just like me by myself first year, and then I brought in my wife to come help me. She was doing also working with another air conditioning company doing dispatching. So she came on board. So it was just me and her for the first year. And the second year, we hired another guy. And then from there, by the fifth year, we had I'll say maybe like 10 employees working out of a 1,200 square foot home. You know what I mean? And my specialties on me is a lot of a sheet metal. I mean, I love doing sheet metal design and everything, and then from there we just start going up. But at the time, back about four or 5 years ago, I never knew nothing about revenue or nothing about anything about where I should be at. I did not follow nothing, no PLs or nothing. Just
I
along,
think a lot of people on here probably
yes,
relate to that. Yeah.
yes. I mean, just as long as the money was coming in, everybody had a paycheck. We had a roof over our heads and family fed. Everybody was doing great. And then suddenly '08, it just like hit everything. I lost everybody, but the business kept on running. And it was just,
Was it commercial that you were
uh,
doing? Because you were doing sheet metal, so I was
yeah,
wondering.
well, we don't do track homes, right, at all. We do a lot of, remodels here and there, a new custom home here and there, not no track models at all. But a lot of remodels, a lot of duct designing, and a lot of that stuff, with a lot of designers that they want to, redesign the home. But '08 went down. It just me again by myself, and then all of a sudden we're here now, and I'm
So how
just
much in revenue are you doing this year?
we're probably I want to hit 1.9 right now. We're at 1.5.
Okay.
Our biggest revenue wasn't back in 2022, maybe like 2.0, because I hit a big job. That's why. But I've been in that 1.5, 1.8, and I just can get all that that range. I mean,
Okay. And is it mostly new construction or
just
mix or fair?
a lot of remodels, just remodels, a lot of remodels and a lot of replacements and a lot of service maintenance and light commercial. But our goal is to get more replacements. That's what
Okay.
that's where we lack of
Okay.
replacements.
And you're looking at wanting what's your profit percentage, if you don't mind me asking?
Profit percentage for a year. Uh,
Yep.
the last time I checked, I usually go by percentage. I think I was maybe around like 18 to 20%. Uh,
Okay.
yeah,
So you're looking at potentially doing like
like
100,
300,000,
yeah, 300,000.
around there. Yeah. Mhm.
Okay. And so kind of small business right now, and now your son, Jacob, that was Rick. So you're planning on right now looking at what do I do to help transfer this over to my son?
Well, I want them to come in, and then from there, whenever I'm ready to retire, just take it over.
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah. And I
or
think there's a lot of, contractors out there that have those plans. Jacob, how old are you? And what have you done in the trade so far?
I turned 24. I think, let me see, what day is it? I turned 24 like a month ago. So far, I'm not a technician at all. I just know the refrigeration cycle as far as HVAC goes. I've helped my dad a few times in the past. I've been on some service calls. But my dad wants me to be more business oriented in that sense because, like he said, he's like probably the best HVAC technician I've ever seen. But he's admittedly said that he's not as business oriented, and that's what he wants me to do. I'm going to school. That's why we went to Home Service Freedoms because I want to learn more about what I'm supposed to be doing. Because not only do I need to learn what they're doing now, but then I need to learn what I can do to make it bigger.
Got it. So, Rick, when you said you have about 300,000 of profit right now, is that after you pay yourself, like you paid yourself a paycheck and then afterwards you have 300K left over? So, sorry, I don't know if you could hear me.
Oh no. Oh, there it
Yeah.
is. I'm sorry. I had the volume down. I'm sorry.
Okay. So if you have 300, you said you had about 300,000 in profit. Is that 300,000 after you paid yourself? Or is that just the amount of money that you are paying yourself for the year?
Well, I mean, we kind of like we don't get like a paycheck, me and my wife. We only only like a little bit, you know what I mean? And then the rest,
Yeah.
we just get everything out of the business, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Okay. So that 300,000 really isn't 300,000 because if you
Yeah.
had to pay yourself 150 grand
Yeah.
to run the company or
Yeah.
whatever, then really you got like $150,000 of profit.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay. So what I would call this is kind of like, this is your small business that really needs to turn the corner when it comes to becoming a business and not a job. Because
Mhm.
reality is Rick, no offense, but like you own a job right now, which is better than having a job. Like
Mhm.
owning a job is, cool because you're working for yourself at that point. But it isn't really like a business that you're turning over to your son. You're kind of training him to get into that spot. And hopefully your son can take it to that next level where it's generating money and going forward. And I think a lot of people, can relate to the spot that you're in. I get questions like this at events all the time, like at Home Service Freedom. But so Jacob, you mentioned you're going to school. What kind of school is that?
It's just our local community college because I need to know the ins and outs. Classes on management, classes on entrepreneurship, some basic accounting. I guess just the basics because my parents they've never taken business classes, especially not before doing the business. So I'd at least want to have like a grasp on what I should know.
Yeah.
Because I don't think I need to go like to some 4-year university and like get like a master's or anything, but I still wanted to get some kind of education in business.
Yeah. So yeah, I highly recommend, and people hear this all the time. They said, Tom, well, you said you don't have to go to college. Truth is you don't. Um, there's some people in the industry that have done very well, like Dave Geiger. He's running, Horizon Home Services at 700 million plus in revenue, and at least right now, and never went to college, never saw the inside of a classroom, and at least not the inside of a college classroom, and he knows his numbers really well on accounting, all the stuff he needs to know. Um, and he always downplays himself, says, "Oh, I'm just a plumber," but he's one smart plumber, let me tell you. So he, I would recommend that when I'm talking to people that are looking at this, and especially with kids coming up. I didn't do it with my kids, but I did it with my sister. My sister had no understanding of the trade. She had great drive, great sales skill, great desire, and work ethic, but she didn't know anything about the trades. Well, I sent her, I sent my sister to um, HVAC school. I mean, she wanted to go. She went on her own, and she called me and said, "Hey, I need you to send me 7 grand to pay for this." She was working for one of my companies at the time that didn't offer free college tuition. My Lee's in California does. And I'm the majority shareholder there, so I get to make those decisions. But so I had to write the check out of my personal bank account. It's my personal credit card. And she went to tech school. But then after that, the next thing I told her is what I'm going to tell you, which is she was deficient in the most important thing that you could learn in business to really make a standalone business, which is the financials. And so when you said I need to take some basic accounting classes and basic stuff there, if there's one thing that I wouldn't skimp on, it's the financials. So if I were you, I would be taking lots of courses. Now, do you need to go to a 4-year institution and get a degree in finance like I did. No, absolutely not. And I know a lot of really dumb people that have gone to four-year institutions and gotten degrees in accounting or finance or whatever else. So it's not, that doesn't, just because even if you did get that, it doesn't mean anything. So what I tell them is, you definitely, especially when you get in there, a lot of people in there are just trying to check a box, say, hey, I got a degree. That's the worst thing you can be doing, because you don't need the degree. You just need the knowledge that comes from knowing your financials. And I would tell people this: accounting is the language of business. And quite frankly, when it comes to accounting, real accounting and understanding how journal entries work and the double entry method and all other stuff is so foreign. It's foreign to people that are, used to just the way we think, way Americans think, the way we were brought up. It's the whole idea of like debits and credits and all that other stuff is just so crazy. And a debit to assets increases the asset. A debit to, liabilities increases your liability, which is actually negative on the company. It's like, well, wait a second, is a debit good or is a debit bad? I don't know. Well, it depends on whether it's an asset or liability. And it's that whole thought process has to be ingrained in you. And if you get that, though, it helps exponentially. The other things I'd be focusing on, especially if you're listening to this call and you've got kids that you're trying to train in it, marketing, accounting, finance, and general business is fine. Leadership stuff. I didn't find very much value in the leadership things that I was taught in business school. I think that at BYU, they required ethics courses, which I felt were very beneficial. But outside of that, the general leadership you really got with reading books outside of that, honestly. A lot of things. One of the books that I love to read that I think is great for business owners is Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. Highly recommend reading that if you get the chance. And there's a few others, but it's that one really just taking ownership of what you're doing and what's happening in the company, and realizing, hey, the buck always stops here. If my technician's screwing up and not doing stuff right, I can't blame the technician. It's either I hired him, I either failed to train him, I failed to fire him on time, I failed to discipline properly, I failed to make a good process that helps technicians grow within my company. One of those things happened that I failed at that I can change. And that book really kind of drives that home and says, hey, take responsibility for your actions. That was probably one of the best things I learned. But anyway, I would definitely, if you have to not skimp on something, don't skimp on the accounting. Don't do just basic accounting. You need to be able to get the point. You don't need to be a CPA. You don't have to go through all that tax stuff, but you need to know enough that when your bookkeeper, your accountant comes in and starts telling you things, you know enough to question it and say, wait a second, how does this make sense? Let me just idiot check this for a second and verify these are correct. And it makes a huge difference. So with that, right now, Rick, are you looking to sell the business to your son, or do you just want to move it over time, or are you just looking for advice on that?
For right now, just advice. My goal was to make this company grow and then probably sell it later on.
Yeah.
But then since and Jacob came to us and said, hey, I mean, I want to help you guys run the business. So now it's just like I'll probably just, just help us take it to the next level. And then from there, we'll see where it goes. I mean, I really don't have plans. I just want to see where, I want to be able to experience the next level.
Yeah. So on the next level, and by the way, what I was talking about with my sister earlier is sent her to HVAC tech school, but then later I sent her to Stanford Executive Education Program. She actually found it. She came to me again. She took the initiative, and I paid for her to go there, and that's really helped take her to the next level. And right now, our revenue in Fresno has doubled this year, and while she was overseeing a lot of that, so she's now head of acquisition, so she's doing more stuff out there, but it's really helped a ton. And I think getting to the next level, that's pretty critical. Hold on just 1 second. Might have to. Okay. Anyway, I think one of the things I would do if I was looking at empowering my son to get in there, and I'm using the word empower on purpose. The reason is that I had a guy who was my business partner at Lee's. His name was Brian Lee. and he owned the company. And it was very similar to yours in that, I mean, he probably had his accounting a lot better understood than what you've got going on right now. I mean, he definitely paid himself out of the business and there's profit afterwards. That kind of stuff was lined out. And he was a little bit bigger. I mean, quite frankly, he was around a little less than 2 million mark, but that was 10 years ago. So a little bit different now. So probably be like having a $2.5 or $3 million company today. And we worked pretty well together. He wasn't my dad, but he basically said, "Hey, I'll sell you the business," and he carried the note on it. And then after a while, he said, "Well, why don't?" He saw it was growing, so he said, "I want to keep half of it." So we made some agreements there. So then we were partners for a while. And there's some advice I'd give you on that because he wasn't my dad, but it was like having a dad. You know, he saw me a lot more than my dad did. He talked to me a lot more than my dad did. And you know, he was a dad in a lot of ways. He definitely had his own thought process on how to grow and run the business. And quite frankly, he made a successful business for many years. It wasn't anywhere close to the level we are now, but it was by all means very successful. And for years, had some bad years, had some good years, that kind of thing. But he had preconceived ideas based on his history and that kind of stuff of what would get the company to where it was going to be. And I remember him telling me one time, he said, he said, "I don't want you leaving. I don't want you leaving with some behemoth $5 million a year company." And to him, $5 million a year was a huge company. And I thought, well, I'm going to go way past that. We ended up, I bought him out later on completely. And he and I now talk to this day about things. But the truth is, like, that company's going to do $100 million in revenue this year. And what I realized now that I didn't realize then, I didn't know what was going on then, but I know now that a lot of the things that he thought, our thought processes and our ideas and the stuff we implement leads to the outcomes we have. So, your company right now is the product of the things that you do, the things that you think, the ways that you act, and everything else. And that's what's gotten you to be, potentially $1.8 million of revenue this year. If you want to be 5 million, 10 million, 20 million, the things you do, the way you act, the things you think all have to change. And so I would put in place and step back and say, okay, son, and this is the scary part. And this is what prevents people from actually doing this, not only to give it to their kids, but also to allow a manager to come in place and really grow it. As they come in and say, okay, here's my company, but then they want to hold the reins and they want to do everything their way. It's like, well, your way got me to 1.8 million. If we want to go to 10, we can't do it my way. Now, it's terrifying because you also don't want to go bankrupt. And you don't want to give your 24-year-old son a gun and let him shoot himself with it. You don't give a 2-year-old a firearm. They can really do some real damage, right? And same thing with like a business. Age doesn't matter as much, but experience does. You can get a lot of experience in 1 year, or you can get that same experience over 10 years, depending on how you get it and the knowledge you take. And really, it depends on you on whether or not you're willing to be humble, you're willing to listen. I'm talking to you, Jacob, right now. Are you willing to be humble? Are you willing to listen? Are you willing to take advice from people? Are you willing to learn? And if you do, then you'll get experience faster. Rick, I'd be sitting here looking at this and thinking, okay, am I willing to step back? And when I say step back, the way people say is, oh, you just leave them the keys and walk away? No, that's not what I say. What I tell people is say, hey, we want to set goals and performance metrics to hit a certain point. We sit down as a team and we say, okay, this is where we want to be. This is where we are now. So let's just say, I don't know what your timeline is, but let's say you want to switch this over and start having him take a bigger role January 1. I'd say, okay, well, for next year, after January 1, we want to do 3 million in revenue. So if that's the case, I'm going to look. And what market are you guys in, by the way?
Palm Springs area.
Okay, so it gets hot down there, right? In the summer?
Quite.
Yeah. if I had a house in Palm Springs and a house in hell, I'd rent out the one in Palm Springs. I'd probably live in hell because that's a hot place. But anyway, just kidding. I live in Vegas, so no one wants to live here in the middle of summer.
Here you go, same weather.
Yeah, it's so you're not going to take 3 million and divide it by 12 and say this is how much money we need to do per month. You're gonna stack that in the summer. Say, well, these are what the summer months are going to have to bring, and this is what the off season is going to bring. And you set realistic expectations of what you're going to need to do in order to hit that. And you're probably going to ramp it slowly over the year so that maybe December is also an off month, but it's going to be a lot more than the January because by December you have time to grow your company. And then we're say, here's the numbers we want to hit and build that budget and build it with your son. So Jacob and Rick, you do it together. Sounds like your wife is involved as well, Rick.
Yes.
So the three of you sit down, say, here's where we want to go. But then you need to give them some space to make decisions in order to hit those numbers. So if you start tying their hands, like in the early days, my partner was really worried about marketing expense because marketing expense tends to get out of hand real quick and you start to make bad decisions and that kind of thing. So I had no marketing budget for the first couple of years and I was still trying to grow the company, which is almost an impossible ask. Later on, he was more comfortable because I had shown how much revenue we were generating. And so he kind of backed off and quit fighting me on the marketing dollars, gave me some marketing dollars. And all of a sudden we just started blowing up. One year we went from 5 million in revenue to 9.4 million in 1 year. And we spent 1.8% of revenue on marketing. So, I mean, I was efficient out of necessity because I had no marketing budget before that. So, but 87% growth rate when you're at 5 million is pretty darn good.
Yeah.
Anyway, I would say, okay, put it in the budget. This is how much you want to spend on marketing, but then let him make the decisions on the marketing. And then hold him accountable for the amount of revenue that's generated from those marketing dollars. And then look at it each month. So this exercise will not only help you to transfer these responsibilities over to your son, and you can make the decisions on how you want to transfer it. Do you want to sell it to him and say, hey, you're going to pay me X amount of dollars per month over time? Do I want to gift it to you over time? You know, you got to talk to your tax attorney about that. And you got to sit down with your wife and make a decision on what you guys want to do there. And obviously talk to your son about it. Hold on. Oh, sorry. We're going to cut that out of the podcast. You've got to make those decisions with your son and with your wife. And, but what I want to focus on is what do you do to help them get to that level? And I would say make that roadmap. And when you make that roadmap, that budget, it not only helps you move to your son, but also helps you to start getting more diligent about when you're looking at your numbers and what your numbers are. Because when I ask you, hey, what's your profit? And you're like, well, last time I looked at it, that's the wrong answer. That flags me and says, okay, Rick's not looking at the numbers. Like he's definitely the field guy. And that's cool. But now when you're doing this, it will help all of you, all three of you, to be more diligent about doing things that you would need to do in a company anyway. Yeah. So it doesn't hurt at all. It's like, oh, wow, I'm going to start seeing these things. And when you start paying attention to them, your revenue and profit's going to go up anyway. And when that happens, what I would do is I would say, yeah, I mean, take some of those education dollars, make sure Jacob's going and getting his stuff done, make sure he's going to his classes, learning these things. And then I would also be, one of the best things you can do is go to these other companies that will let you in. When I was, building my company, I had very little money. I had no marketing budget, but anytime I got a little extra money, I would go buy a plane ticket to whoever in the country would allow me into their shop. So I could watch what they were doing and how they were doing it and what they were doing. That was basically a master's course in how to run an air conditioning business, which no college offers that master's course. So it was great just picking it up. And I realized somebody out there is always doing it better than me. So yeah. Rick, were you going to have any questions there?
No.
Yeah. I think, does this make sense? Like Jacob, does this make sense to you?
Yeah, it does. It's mainly more so talking about how there's things I need to do because, like you said, how my dad said he's not looking at the numbers. Okay, that's where I should probably go in and say, okay, I'll do this now because like I said, I was brought in not to do exactly what my dad does, but to do more than that too as well. So I get what you're saying.
Well, and that's the thing is that for people that are listening to this that aren't trying to get it, send this over to their kids, the exact same process happens when you're trying to add a manager in the company. Exact same thing. Today, yesterday I was on an executive meeting with Lee's. My sister wasn't on the call. She's in charge of migrating all these acquisitions. I've got a few acquisitions on the plate. We finished one August 31st. We got two more supposed to be closed by October 30th or 31st. And she is in charge of integrating all of them and coming up with a plan for integration and migrating all together. And it came up in the executive meeting yesterday, something about there was actually ServiceTitan in our software, and they were negotiating something. I have to step out of all contract negotiations with ServiceTitan because I have a conflict of interest because I work at ServiceTitan. And I said, well, aren't you guys going to add a lot of managed techs because you're adding this company, you're bringing all their salespeople. It's a door knocking company. You're bringing all their salespeople in and adding them to ServiceTitan. And they said, no, we weren't going to do that. Kathryn's not going to do it. And I said, oh, okay. It was my understanding that we were. And my thing at that point is, hey, I said, Kathryn's in charge of that. Let's take this offline and wait till she gets back from vacation tomorrow and talk to her when she gets back. She came back, said, no, Tom, I made a decision. We're not going to do that. We're going to do this differently. And here's how we're going to execute on it. And it's not the thing that I would have done, but it was her decision. And that's it. That's end of discussion. That's her decision. That's her department. She's operating. Now, also, when you have those people in those positions, you incentivize them based on their performance. So if you've got a department that's going to, let's say you got your plumbing department and you got the plumbing service manager. Well, I pay the plumbing service manager a bonus based on the gross margin of the plumbing department because that's what he can control. My air conditioning service manager, I give him a bonus based on the gross margin of the HVAC service department because that's what he can control. He can't control the overhead. He can't control those things, but he can control the costs of, materials and the cost of labor and that kind of stuff. He can, tell people to stay home instead of bringing his buddies in, when we don't have work and that kind of thing. So when you incentivize them like that, you can say, hey, look, it's your decision, your department, your call. But on the other hand, by the way, if they're screwing around and not doing what they should be doing, or they're just not performing well enough, it's going to hit their pocketbook because that profit isn't going into their pocket. So in that way, it aligns all of our interests. And so at that point, I can say, hey, look, here's your metrics to hit. Now, if they're not doing it over time, 6 months, a year goes by, they're not still hitting it. I've been giving you opportunities to fix it and they still don't. Well, then I need to get a new service manager. And they know that. But I don't need to get all excited and jumping up and down and kicking things around like, oh man, we're not doing that. We're not doing this. And I'm making all the decisions. You got to let them make the decisions. The crazy thing is that when I left Lee's and we had a new manager in place, we actually started growing more than when I was there. So I left Lee's to go work at ServiceTitan in late 2019, early 2020. My first day at ServiceTitan was January 6, 2020. We were about 15 million in revenue that year before, and we're going to be 100 million in revenue this year. And so 4 years later,
Are you saying 15 million?
We were 15, 1-5.
1-5. You guys are shooting for 100?
Yeah, we're gonna hit 100 this year.
That's within 5 years?
Yeah. So 2020, 2021, 22, 23, 24. Yeah, so 5 years.
Man.
And it's and that's one of my companies. Since then I bought other companies, sold some companies, that kind of stuff, all since in the past 5 years. And people say, well, how do you do it? And I've even had people say, oh, well, you're a hands-off leader. I'm not a hands-off leader. I take their metrics, I give them incentives, and I hire the smartest people I can, and I hold them accountable to the metrics. That doesn't mean I'm hands-off. It just means I let them do their thing. And when people say, well, yeah, but you're just getting lucky, I'm like, well, I guess I'm getting lucky over and over and over again because all these companies are making money. And I'm like, one of them sold in Vegas that I was hands off, like I wasn't there a lot, but we sold it for a lot of money. We went from negative 1 million in profit to 6 million in profit in 1 year. And then we sold the company. 6 million profit. That was Fetch Tech. And the one in Southern California called Brody Pinnell, I do hardly anything in, but the manager's amazing. And they, they were 6 million in revenue with 600,000 to the bottom line.
Mhm.
And the ownership group and the, managers are awesome. The structure is great. My partner in there is amazing. And he's just really a forward thinking guy that really, honors people's positions and lets them operate. And they'll be over 50 million in revenue this year, up from 6.
6.
And that's in also 5 years. So it's, and they're putting large percentages to the bottom line. So it's, they've asked me not to talk about it, but it's probably one of the most profitable ones in my portfolio. And that's what I try to push people when they say, oh, I'm bringing my kid in, I'm bringing a manager in, whatever. It's, hey, don't bring them in and then tie their hands and tell them they can't do things and this and that. Now, if they're going to do things that's going to bankrupt the company, yeah, no. But if not, just let them do what they're going to do and let them operate and let them grow and blossom. And hopefully your son's going to get to the point where, he's going to grow far beyond your expectations and you're going to get mailbox money in the future, Rick, and coming in while you are sitting on a beach somewhere in Cancun or something. I don't know. Some Hawaii, who knows?
Yeah. Well, that's what that's what I want. That's what my plans are. I want them to take over. I want them to do better than what I did. Way
And they
beyond.
should.
Way beyond.
Thanks, guys. I really appreciate you guys coming on the podcast. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear it. So they'll cut that and we can keep talking. The recording's over in 1 minute.
Yeah.
So I wanted to have a close to that.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah.